Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have a guest today. It's Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Great to have you. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hi, Jonathan. Glad to be here as well.
Yeah. Well, yesterday was a very sad day that the Russian fascists on purpose destroyed the building in Odessa, killing and maiming several people. They did it on purpose. There was no any military base close by. It was intentional attempt to kill and maim as many people as possible, and they used Iskander missile for that. And Ivan, I understand you have a short film that we could see. Please, let's do it now.
Yeah, let's watch that.
Missile hit Odessa, killed at least 4 people and a dog, injured at least 28, including 2 children and a pregnant woman, burned a building, proved that no day is safe next to a terrorist state. If any more proof is needed for the world to stop it.
So very
message quite succinctly.
Yeah. Well, situation is changing though. The U.S. Military help, weapons mainly, is on its way. Should reach or already reached Ukraine anytime now. And interestingly enough, there are 2 major thoughts that I came across, and one of them is what we discussed on a previous show is immediately, or as soon as it's ever possible, to cut off Crimea, cut off this this bridge. How long is going to be still there?
Just get rid of that bridge, render it unusable for an indefinite period of time, and you have effectively isolated the Crimea.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that betting sites don't provide opportunities to make bets how many days that bridge will last.
Don't put it past them. There will be bets.
I've heard that this operation will be before the so-called inauguration of Putin, which is planned on May 7th. And according to that, now almost every day Crimea is being attacked, and they claim that they're being attacked by the ATACMS missiles, and we have successful destruction of their anti-air defense systems like S-400 in Jankoy. So obviously Ukraine is preparing to launch a massive air attack on Crimea. Especially we all of us were busy discussing the military help from the United States, and in its shadow, military help from Great Britain passed almost unnoticed, and this military help is quite remarkable. It's the biggest military help from Great Britain, like 500 million of pounds. British pounds, and it consists from, of course, the entire list is kept in secret, but what I've seen in media that it counts like 1,600 different missiles for air defense systems and the Storm Shadow missiles, which were already successful in striking military objects in occupied Crimea. So hopefully we will see in near future the results of those military help, both from United States and Great Britain.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that the idea of cutting off Crimea and liquidate one way or another this stupid bridge. So this is one thought, and I'm myself very much with it. Now, the second thought, I've heard, I think yesterday on one of the programs, I'm listening to Ukrainian and some Russian, not Russian, I mean Ukrainian, but in Russian programs, but in Russian language. There was actually a big debate whether Ukrainians should provide Russian language programs, and one opinion is that absolutely not, because it's the language of the enemies. And another point of view is that if we will provide the programs in Russian, the much more people will be able to listen to it, because there are a lot of people living like in Canada and United States and Europe and elsewhere who understand Russian and their mother language, and may have difficulties with Ukrainian. So I'll leave it for debate. I am not one way or another, although for me personally, the Russian language programs are more convenient, although I have no problem listening to Ukrainian language programs just as well. So there was a military expert from Azerbaijan. He's colonel or even general, I'm not so sure. Maybe you remember, Ivan. His name is Rustam Zadeh. He's very, very well-known military expert. His opinion is that this tranche of help that just arriving from now, this is good enough to help Ukraine to fight on equal terms with Russia, at least for before the end of the year, say maybe November, December of this year. From further than that, they would need more tranches. And in a way, and that's what he was saying 6 months ago and 12 months ago and 18 months ago. Nothing changed in his view. His view is very simple. You should forget about territories taking back this town or that town. Your goal is there should not be a day when you didn't kill 1,000 Russian soldiers. The goal, 1,500 and higher. But never a day when it's being killed less than 1,000. So all you have to do is to keep the active defense and just let Russian army to destroy itself, and let them doing all the attacks and try to take another village or two here and there. All your goal is, and you know what? I noticed that in the last few days, there were 1,350 Russian soldiers killed. 1,350, so it's closer to 1,500 than to 1,000, believe it or not, the way I understand mathematics. Jonathan, how you combine both thoughts?
Well, this is interesting. The Ukrainians have made very clever minor tactical withdrawals in the east in order to reinforce their defenses and make them stronger. The Russians, thinking that they're achieving successes, they pour more troops into their attack, not changing their style any, and as a result are taking greater casualties. So the Russians think that they are succeeding, but the Ukrainians are actually achieving more decisive results on the defense, all the while waiting for the accumulation of the proper weapons and the proper time to inflict that decisive operational counterstroke that we have all discussed on previous programs. The decisive stroke being, in this case, a strike to sever the logistical and reinforcement link between Russia and Crimea. All that being centered mainly on that bridge, the Kerch Bridge. Once that is neutralized and effectively taken out of the picture for the foreseeable future, then the Russian occupation forces in Crimea will be effectively isolated and vulnerable to a decisive operational counterstroke on land by the Ukrainian strategic reserve forces. Once that is done, then Crimea falls back into Ukrainian possession, thus reversing the illegal annexation of 2014, which cannot be interpreted as anything other than a decisive operational defeat for Russia. And that will then strengthen Ukraine's hand for a subsequent counteroffensive as we essentially to drive the Russians out of the rest of Ukraine in the east. All of this is now attainable given proper timing and integration of new Western weapons into Ukrainian hands and the Ukrainians' increased efforts to raise their own military production and greater and more effective use of drones. All of this creating a new style of warfare, which believe me, the United States military is taking very careful notes of what the Ukrainians are teaching the United States.
Well, it's more to do with a continental war because, the wars that U.S. was conducting, it's Iraq, Afghanistan, and similar situations, they're not really continental wars per se, right? There's something different. But still, I agree with your point that U.S., and not only U.S., I think European military powers are studying what's happened in Ukraine. On a battlefield. I would like to ask you, Ivan, you know that Russians, they believe in some kind of dates that they have to please Mr. Putin, and one is the inauguration, and another one is military parade on May 9th. And therefore, while Ukrainians could be busy trying to proceed cutting off the Crimea, but they have to be also careful not to leave their positions in the eastern direction, because that's where most likely Putin and his thugs will strike. What do you think, Ivan?
Yeah, definitely. There are rumors that Putin issued an order to capture the Chasiv Yar city in Donetsk region by the 9th of May, and now it's the direction of the most severe fights and Russian attacks. What is good in this situation that Russian officers, in order to achieve this, complete this order from Putin, they don't consider any losses in soldiers, in vehicles, in weapons. They put all their efforts to complete this order, and this makes them vulnerable. And of course, they are losing more and more soldiers. We see in the daily reports from the Ukrainian military command that their average losses per day are more than 1,000 soldiers. Before that, for a very long period, they lost like 700 or 800 soldiers per day. The bad in this thing is that it's of course it's hard to defend for Ukrainian side, for Ukrainians, and especially in terms of delays with the weapons from our allies. Hopefully these delays are going to the end, and now that window of opportunity for Russians when they really were able to put all their major efforts and capture any more territories is closing, and I'm not sure that they will be able to capture to complete this order actually and capture Chasiv Yar before the 9th of May. And what is also remarkable, I've watched several interviews with different military experts that they consider and they're preparing a major counter-strike, which according to the rumors is going to begin in May or in June, and that one of the possible directions of the counter-strike will be Kharkiv region, and especially Kupiansk, which is a major railroad station in that region, and which will allow them to proceed with may allow them to proceed with a successful strike in that direction. But now they are not attacking Kupiansk and on Kupiansk direction and on other directions of Kharkiv region. I mean, they are not going in any major attacks because they lack resources for considering major attacks on different directions. Now they're majorly taking only one direction, Chasiv Yar, and of course they are they're carrying out some artillery strikes, they're air bombing, etc. on other directions, but in terms of land operation, their major direction is only one. And that means that two things actually, or either they're preparing resources for that major attack in May, June, which was announced, or other reason is that they lack of resources for even for not going to major attacks, but to initiating major land operations on several directions at this moment. So, but what is going to be, we'll see. And time is coming, and May is nearby, and June as well. So we'll see how successful they will be with their strike on summer strike, which was announced.
Well, one thing is, why this number, 1,000 to 1,500 a day, being a goal? This Rustam Zadeh, this expert that I mentioned, he explains that Russia, even without committing itself to formal mobilization, but the mobilization is still underway, and they are able to mobilize 30,000 conscripts a day. A month. Okay, so if you calculate the 1,000, for example, if you take 1,000 being eliminated in Ukraine a day, it's 30,000 a month, and they're bringing in new 30,000 a month. But Jonathan, would you agree that these are not the same 30,000?
Oh no, no, it's not. It's not as if it said, "Well, we've been holding back our best soldiers all this time. We've been feeding in our trash first. Now we're going to bring in the really good soldiers." No, no, no. Just the opposite is occurring. So now they're going to add more numbers, but it's just going to raise the casualty rates. They're dipping deeper into their more inexperienced manpower pool. And so this is just going to, it's well, the old saying, throwing good money after bad. Well, they're just throwing more worse troops, feeding in lower quality troops to try and make up for the fact that you've lost all your best ones. So now it's not going to help them. And the improved weaponry and the improved reinforcements and the possibility, that they have to account for now, is the possibility, I'm not saying the certainty, but the possible deployment of NATO troops into Ukraine to take over, now not necessarily put them on the front lines, but to take over certain things to free up more Ukrainian soldiers to strengthen other areas of the front. That's something the Russians have to reckon with now as well. And oh, by the way, this 1,000, this casualty rate that the Russians are suffering of in excess of 1,000 soldiers a day, for the effect that this must be having on the Russian people, on the Russian at home, it has to be registering in some ways that we cannot even predict, although we're seeing the desertion rate going up very high. But to use a historical comparison, during the Vietnam War, as a child, I was watching Walter Cronkite on CBS News, and every week he would report the casualties. He would report the number of American soldiers killed, number of American soldiers wounded for the week, and he would report the estimate of North Vietnamese soldiers and Viet Cong killed that week, which is always a lot higher. In the end, you notice it didn't matter. But the interesting thing is the number of American soldiers would typically be less than 100 for the week. Now, the exception to this was during the Tet Offensive of January 1968, when the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong launched a major countrywide offensive in an effort to achieve some sort of operational victory. And the American casualties for that week, I noticed, shot up to over 1,000 for the week. But those casualties, so it was 1 to 2 weeks, even though the offensive itself failed in a military sense because they were decisively defeated, that was the turning point in public opinion. That was when public opinion in the United States turned decisively against further U.S. participation in the Vietnam War. And matter of fact, even Walter Cronkite voiced his opposition, which is a first in American television, voiced his opposition to the U.S. involvement in Vietnam. And President Lyndon Johnson at the time said, "Oh, if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost the country." So that is in a ways that we cannot fully see, because the opinion of the Russian people isn't as necessarily as transparent to us here in the West as it would be, back during the 1960s in the United States. Still, there has to be some cumulative effect on the morale of the Russian people and their willingness to continue to support and volunteer for, or even submit to a draft in the Russian army. So you see this in rising desertion rates. You see this in the successful attempts by Ukraine to convince Russian soldiers to desert, to surrender. That is having an effect. So all of these things. Yes, Ivan.
Yeah, continue, please. I just got an idea I want to share regarding the Vietnam.
Well, as a matter of fact, I'd like to defer to your idea, but the point is there are things going on behind the scenes which we don't necessarily see very clearly at the moment, but there is a cumulative, decisive effect on the morale of the Russian people and their willingness to support Putin in this war. So, Ivan, I will now, rather than toss the grenade in your direction, I will hand you the football and let you run with it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that this counter in the Vietnam War was around 60,000. Yeah, United States, according to the official data, lost 58,000 of soldiers in Vietnam, and that was enough to take a decision to withdraw American forces from the Vietnam. In Soviet Union lost, according to the official data, lost 10,000 of soldiers in Afghanistan, and also had to withdraw their forces from there. Actually, we don't know what their real losses were in Afghanistan, because they concealed them, and even after the full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine, they didn't confirm any losses for a long period, and now they confirm like several thousand of soldiers, which is just
ridiculous.
Ridiculous, yeah. But according to the military command of Ukraine, they already lost around 460,000 soldiers in Ukraine, which the number of 400,000 also confirms by the British intelligence, and we have a really big question when they will stop, when the Russian population will begin to ask questions. Where are all our people? We
Yeah.
have to kill million of Russians, or what is the number?
Well, when the Russian casualty figure passes about 687,000, that will have exceeded the number of Americans killed in the American Civil War, which is the single largest loss for America in any of its wars.
And it's already more than America lost in Second World War.
Correct.
In 40 years, and this is in 2
Right.
years. So they lost already.
They have already lost more soldiers in Ukraine than America lost during all of World War II. You are correct.
John, one quick question. To cheer up his electorate, or if you can call it electorate, Putin and his people more and more using some kind of a nuclear threats, sometimes openly, sometimes they just talk about it as it's a possibility, and so on. Do you think any real intent behind all this talk, or it's just a
Well, the thing is that they refer to their nuclear deterrence forces. They use the word ustrashenia, intimidation, as I've said
that's
before.
what they're trying to do?
And that's what they're trying to do. They are playing the nuclear. They are doubling down and playing the nuclear card for all it is worth. And this, according to from my research and my decades of observing their behavior and their perceptions and their reactions to various actions by the West, to me, the solution is perfectly clear. That we should, and also because of the superior performance of ballistic missile defense at the operational level and the theater level, the one component that needs to be filled in is to be able to destroy nuclear missiles in their boost phase. The only way you do that effectively is from space. And in order to make it stable and very difficult for Russia or China to retaliate against that, you have to have a space fleet. You have to upgrade the U.S. Space Force. That's the long-term solution. In the short term, you notice that Macron of France has said that he is willing to have France create a 300 missile nuclear shield, a nuclear umbrella of 300 French missiles, which would be a significant upgrade to the French Force de Frappe. And that would be, it's not exactly equal to the Russian nuclear arsenal, but it's a significant addition to the existing combined nuclear forces of the United States and its NATO allies. It would greatly increase the threat to Russia as a deterrent, but that's using the traditional formula. The real solution is when a nation is confronted, like the United States, with several nuclear armed adversaries of various sizes, the answer to that is not build more nuclear weapons. The answer is neutralize their arsenals with a global ballistic missile defense system, utilize to the maximum extent possible American technology cooperating with its allies to neutralize the one thing that makes Russia a great power in its own perception, their nuclear missile arsenal. And by extension, once you do that, you will also effectively neutralize the Chinese nuclear arsenal, the North Korean nuclear arsenal, and the Iranian nuclear arsenal, such as it is, or such as it may be. But you get the idea. Once you have neutralized their arsenals, okay, what are they going to do? Attack? That's suicide. Are they going to build their own strategic nuclear defenses? I'd say, go ahead, waste your money. We're not planning to attack you anyway. Go ahead,
Exactly.
waste your money. You go ahead and bankrupt yourselves trying to build up your strategic defenses.
So essentially, John, your point is that the Russian nuclear arsenal, nobody going to touch, have it, enjoy it. The only thing, it cannot be delivered anywhere, really. So you're sitting on your arsenal, you're enjoying it every day, and you can have a bottle of cognac watching it, but there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, you can't eat it.
That's right. Yeah, so
You can't eat it. You can't trade it. It's essentially a sunk asset, and its sole value to the Russians is that to them it affirms their great power status. But again, their great power status is resting on a very narrow foundation, and one that can be neutralized given a concerted effort to use American technology to create that final piece of the global ballistic missile defense system, the ability to destroy nuclear missiles in their boost phase while they are most vulnerable to counterattack by ballistic missile defense systems. Again, that is something, and that is why I kind of look with some consternation at the Pentagon's plans to spend, now get this, another $188 billion to build new nuclear missile defense systems. Now, if I'm sitting there as a Secretary of Defense under a new administration, hypothetically, I would be saying, oh, no. Divert all that money into upgrading the Space Force, upgrading ballistic missile defense, building more of the type of ballistic missile defense systems that nations all over the world are asking for. So we're improving our economy to a certain extent, but we are also, by using ballistic missile defense, that is an effective, what I call, strategy of asymmetric response, or in Russian, strategia asymmetricheskaya reagирования. Something the Russians they're saying, oh my, and the Russians are all saying, Bozhe moi.
Exactly. That's all what they're going to say. Ivan, so this situation is that something has happened in the West in the perception of Russian-Ukrainian war. Something has changed drastically. And now there is no more talk about saving Putin's face and helping him to get out of this war somehow and so on. Nobody talks anymore about it. It used to be Macron, it used to be German counselors here and there, but it's all stopped. Did you notice that?
Yeah, hopefully they received a large number of evidences that he's really a war criminal, and that even saying about him such things like let him save his face is toxic and makes toxic and unpopular every Western politician. We've also noticed that even Donald Trump now says that not so obviously that he will stop military support for Ukraine, and that military support for Ukraine is not in priority because probably everyone understands that Russia being ruled by Putin is a real threat for the whole civilized world because they are not stopping in conducting more and more war crimes every day, like that yesterday shelling of Odessa, where they killed peaceful citizens who were walking just on the bank of the sea, on the seaside. They've killed them with the ballistic missile Iskander. So you can do any business with the terrorists. But what is surprising that in this way, when the whole world discuss that Russia should be stopped, that we must cut their sources of income, etc., etc. United States lifts of restrictions from several Russian banks. in order to pay them for oil, gas, and other energy resources. And definitely this will bring into Russia budget several more billions of dollars, which they will spend on killing Ukrainians. And such decisions really upsetting, and hopefully that decision be cancelled as soon as possible, because you can't say in one time that Putin is a thug and terrorist, and that Russia should be stopped, and in other moment continue trading with Russia, paying them money in order for them to kill even more Ukrainians. This is ridiculous.
And this, and I would submit, Ivan, that this is the result of the West's lack of a cohesive grand strategic plan, a grand strategic doctrine, in the form of the containment strategy that was affected during the Cold War. Now this strategy that you see emerging is more or less an ad hoc response, or an ad hoc. They are collectively and separately coming to the conclusion, yes, it is in our interest to support Ukraine. We have to stop Russia here. And the negotiations are taking place all in a bilateral fashion, not by NATO negotiating with Ukraine, but with individual members, each agreeing separately to provide assistance. And so this makes it look chaotic. It makes it look very messy. And it also, even though NATO is trying to formulate a strategic response on an economic, but they can't do so on an economic front, because again, there is no overarching grand strategy to which NATO and the United States are subscribing. This is all being sort of done on the fly as it's an emerging strategy. And the opportunity to have a cohesive economic and military grand strategy in order to contain Russia can only take place, interestingly enough, after a victorious conclusion to the current war in Ukraine, where Ukraine successfully expels the Russian occupation forces from Ukraine. And then you can proceed with such steps as integrating Ukraine into NATO as a member and into the European Union as a member, to effect both economic as well as military recovery, and to stabilize the entire situation so that Russia does not dare attempt such aggression for the foreseeable future.
Yes, Jonathan, I agree with you. And you know what's happened with the years of perestroika? You remember Gorbachev made a great effort to rebuild Russia, and the West was impressed. If you remember Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, they said that Gorbachev is a man that we can trust and we can work with. And then came Yeltsin, and remember his conducting military orchestra in Germany and being drunk that he couldn't even get off the plane in Ireland. And so all this stuff, kind of a West really thought that, okay, it's time of Russia to rebuild and become really a democratic country and friends and so on. And then came Putin, and by the year 2007, with his Munich speech, something else indicated that it's not so fast, not so.
Yeah. By the way, interestingly enough, the late Henry Kissinger warned of the potential of the resurgence of Russia back in the early 1990s. As a matter of fact, I include that in the Russian view of U.S. strategy near the beginning of the book, where we talk about Henry Kissinger is warned, just because the Soviet Union has collapsed, that does not mean that Russia will not attempt in the future to regain its former positions. He warned about that decades in advance.
Yeah.
And he was very prescient, and he was correct.
If you consider Russia's land mass, which is 1/6 of the whole world, it's enormous. And
And
Yeah.
that is what Henry Kissinger was citing as part of it. Yeah, they will inevitably begin to reassert themselves just due to the great mass and the resources that they have available. And so we have to be very careful, because their historical pattern reveals that their concept of security is bezopasnost, without danger. Therefore, in order for Russia to feel secure, its neighbors must be made to feel insecure, if not subordinate, and essentially, a buffer states. That's how Russia
And
views
that's
its
what they want to
neighbors.
make out of Ukraine. They want to make Ukraine a buffer state and just to view it as their own security, without realizing that Ukraine is an independent country, which Ukraine wants to nothing in common with Russia. They won't go European Union, NATO. They want to be independent country, a member of the civilized world, unlike Russia. Well, with that, I would like to thank you very much for today's program, and I will see you next Friday.
There you go.
Same place, same time. Thank you very much, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Bye.
Bye-bye.